A millionaire tricked his virgin assistant into a fake party. But that night changed everything. New York had never known sleep. Lights from towering skyscrapers pierced the night, blending with the crisp breath of an autumn morning. This was a city fueled by ambition, built on the hunger for power. They said if you could survive here, you could survive anywhere. In the heart of the financial district, where billion-dollar deals unfolded in seconds, Caldwell Enterprises rose as an undeniable symbol. A fortress of steel and glass, its height swallowed the skyline, reflecting the golden haze of the city below. To most, it was a monument to dominance. To Natalie Carter, it was the heartbeat of her last 3 years. Natalie was not the kind of woman to fade into the crowd. Sharp, intelligent, and instinctively perceptive, she had mastered the unspoken language of Ethan Caldwell. The silent gestures, the fleeting glances, the details no one else noticed. She knew exactly how he took his coffee. Americano, black, but a sudden switch to double espresso before tense meetings. She understood that his silences weren't emptiness, but moments of calculation, when decisions with the power to shift entire markets hung in balance. She even recognized the faint crease in his brow, the subtle mark of dissatisfaction with a contract. Sometimes she wondered if she had spent too much time studying him, but the truth was, no one else could do it as well as she did. And Ethan knew that. 6:45 in the morning. The 50th floor office remained wrapped in silence. As always, Natalie arrived before anyone else, preparing schedules, reviewing critical documents. The neon light glinted against polished marble, casting an even colder glow across the vast room. Ding! The familiar sound of the private elevator sliced through the quiet. She didn't need to turn. She knew exactly who had arrived. Steady footsteps echoed with precision. Ethan Caldwell appeared, tall and lean in a flawlessly tailored charcoal suit. Every stride radiated control, as if the world were a chessboard, and he alone knew the final move. His gaze swept over Natalie, just for a second, but long enough to make her heart stumble. The quarterly report. His voice was deep, firm, and cutting. "It's already on your desk." Natalie's reply was smooth, her tone composed, betraying nothing. The words lasted mere seconds, yet the air thickened with something unnamed. An invisible thread stretched between them, pulling closer, holding apart. Natalie adjusted her blouse, turning away before her eyes betrayed her. Behind her, Ethan clasped his hands behind his back, his gaze lingering on her reflection in the glass. 3 years. Every morning, the same performance. But somewhere beneath the silence, a question lingered unanswered. How long until everything changed? Every morning, Natalie arrived at least an hour before official work began. By 6 o'clock sharp, the lights were on, the desk arranged, the schedule reviewed, every file in order. It wasn't simply duty, it was discipline, her own law for survival. In a city where $500 million could change hands in a matter of minutes, even the smallest mistake could undo a woman's credibility. Natalie had never permitted herself that risk. She knew Ethan better than anyone. She knew when he needed absolute silence to think. She recognized when his usual Americano had to be replaced with a double espresso, because within minutes, he would step into a meeting that could decide the fate of a venture. She read the meaning behind every slight crease in his brow, every still moment at the window, as though the entire market shifted beneath his gaze. To the outside world, Ethan was a wall of unbroken steel. To Natalie, he was anything but invisible. Every detail was etched sharply into her awareness. and that was what created the fragile thread between them. A brush of hands when passing a file was enough to thicken the air. A glance that lingered too long in the boardroom was enough to throw her heart off rhythm. Each time she forced herself to turn away, to pretend nothing had happened. Do not give anyone the wrong impression, she reminded herself. In this world, a single rumor could undo everything. She could not allow 3 years of discipline to be reduced to a cheap label. The CEO's mistress. Natalie had fought to prove her worth by skill alone, and she would never let fleeting emotions, no matter how strong, jeopardize that. But the heart was not a spreadsheet to be controlled. Sometimes, when Ethan stepped closer than necessary, her breath caught in her chest. Sometimes, when his eyes lingered longer than they should, it took every ounce of strength to keep her hand from trembling. She knew she was balanced on a fragile edge, between flawless professionalism and a feeling she dared not name, and this morning was no exception. When Ethan passed by, his gaze touched her for only a second. Yet to Natalie, that single second stretched into forever, a dangerous silence neither dared to break. The invisible thread between them did not stop at the mornings. It stretched through the day, threading itself into meetings, late nights, and every moment when they were forced to pretend nothing lingered between them. On Monday morning, department heads took turns presenting in the boardroom. Natalie sat beside Ethan, jotting down notes, occasionally raising her head to add a point. Her voice rang out, clear and steady. If we pour the entire budget into advertising and neglect product refinement, then in 3 months our competitors will surpass us. The room fell silent. The numbers on the screen faded against the sharp persuasion in her words. Ethan tilted his head toward her, his gaze fixed on that determined face. Inside, a thought burned. She sees what no one else can. That's why I cannot afford to lose her. His hand clenched beneath the table, forcing his expression to remain neutral. Because if anyone saw the pride, no, the admiration burning in him, the fragile line between them would falter. On Wednesday night, when the clock struck 10, the office belonged only to them. Natalie typed, the glow of her screen-lighting eyes weary yet fiercely focused. Ethan stood by the window, the city sprawling below, yet his mind tethered to the woman seated opposite. Do you want me to go through the draft contract one more time? Natalie asked, her voice husky from a long day. Ethan turned, his eyes catching on her hand, flipping tiredly through pages. For a moment, he wanted to step closer, to cover her hand with his, to say, enough. Rest. Instead, he kept the words behind his teeth, replying quietly, you always know when to double-check. Trust your instincts. Natalie smiled faintly before returning to her work. Once, as she passed him a file, her fingers brushed his. Just a second, but long enough to constrict his throat. She pulled back instantly, feigning indifference while inside her heart pounded wildly. Don't let him notice, please don't. Rumors, however, never slept. One afternoon, during a strategy meeting, a senior manager half-joked, maybe the reason Ms. Carter always anticipates the boss's needs is because she takes special care of him. Scattered laughter rippled. Natalie sat straight-backed, her expression calm, though inside flames seared her. Ethan gripped his pen so tightly it nearly snapped. He wanted to cut the man down, to throw words sharp enough to silence him. His mind thundered, do not touch her. Yet reason whispered, if he reacted, even with a glance, Natalie would pay the price. So he stayed silent, his face like ice, as though he hadn't heard a thing. But Natalie, without looking, felt the restrained fury in each of his breaths. That night, alone in her apartment, Natalie sat by the window, staring out at the city lights. I built my life on one rule: never let emotions seep into work. Then why does a single look from him unravel me? And Ethan, in his penthouse, stood against the glass, confessing to himself, I can outmaneuver any deal. Yet why am I terrified of crossing this line? And so the days passed, both of them trapped in contradiction. A performance acted so flawlessly that everyone else believed it was nothing but professionalism. Only they knew, beneath the surface, their hearts waged a battle with every beat. In the days that followed, Ethan's inner conflict grew unbearable. He could hold himself back in the boardroom, swallow his fury at poisonous remarks, but he could not silence the mounting desire to have time with Natalie, only her, away from the watchful eyes of the company. That night, alone in his penthouse, Ethan stood before the tall mirror. Warm light poured down, reflecting a man cold and in control of everything, except this. I built an empire from nothing, outmaneuvered the toughest rivals, yet one look from her, and I retreat. If this continues, I'll lose her before I ever take a step. He closed his eyes, and an idea struck him. Reckless, but the only solution he could see. On Monday morning, as Natalie reviewed his schedule on her dual monitors, Ethan stopped at her desk. His voice was low, calm as always, yet edged with an unusual hesitation. Natalie, I need your help with something. She looked up, sharp and attentive as ever. Of course, Mr. Caldwell. Ethan pressed his lips together, then continued. This Saturday, I'm hosting a birthday party for my niece. She's turning 16. I want it to be perfect. Natalie blinked, startled. In 3 years of working beside him, Ethan had never once mentioned family. The words felt like a door cracking open, revealing a part of him she had never seen. A warmth stirred quietly in her chest. You'd like me to help organize it? Her voice softened, touched with a rare smile. He nodded. You have a far better eye for these things than I do. I trust you to make it special. To Natalie, it sounded like a rare confession, that he needed her, not only in business but in something personal. A quiet pride unfurled within her. I'll take care of everything. You can count on me. Thank you, Ethan replied, his tone deep, sincere. As she lowered her gaze back to her work, Ethan drew a steady breath. Guilt seeped in like shadow. Coward. To invent someone who doesn't exist, only to keep her beside you for a night. But if this is the only way to have that moment, I'll take it. The moment Ethan mentioned a niece's birthday, Natalie poured her entire focus into the plan. To her, this wasn't just a private event. It was proof that Ethan, the cold man everyone knew, had finally allowed her into a part of his personal life he had always kept hidden, and she treated it as an honor. Throughout the week, Natalie's desk became a command center. Sticky notes covered every surface, her calendar packed from early morning until late at night. She called, emailed, met with vendors, all for one purpose: to make the celebration perfect. On Tuesday morning, she sat in a quiet cafe, phone pressed to her ear, her voice precise. I need a menu for a sweet 16, not a lavish adult banquet, but something fresh, youthful, yet elegant. Think gourmet pizza, bite-sized sliders, fruit mocktails with a touch of foam. The caterer promised suggestions by the end of the day. Natalie typed a few notes into her tablet before diving into the next task. She built the theme from the single detail Ethan had mentioned. My niece loves photography. From that small seed, Natalie created a vision, black and white tones accented by soft, golden light, faux Polaroid frames lining the walls, a photo booth tucked in the corner for guests to capture and print instant memories. She paused, picturing a 16-year-old girl stepping into that space, eyes wide with joy. A smile flickered across her lips. So Ethan does care, more than he lets on. He isn't just the steel wall everyone thinks he is. On Wednesday, she visited a renowned cake artist. The baker unrolled a sketch, a vintage camera cake. The lens sculpted with such detail, it looked real. "Perfect," Natalie breathed. "When this cake arrives, I want everyone to gasp. It can't just be dessert. It has to be art." The baker grinned, promising delivery by Saturday evening. Throughout the week, Natalie all but lived inside her plan. She checked the lighting in the event space, selected music that was youthful yet refined, even inspected every table and chair in person. Ethan watched it all from the sidelines. Sometimes he lingered in the hallway, looking through the glass wall as Natalie spoke briskly on the phone. Hair loose around her face, hand scribbling notes, eyes lit with focus. Her energy consumed the room. One evening, he found her still at her desk when the clock had already struck 8. On the screen, her task list stretched endlessly. He stood in the doorway, words burning on his tongue. "Stop, Natalie. You don't know that everything you're building rests on a lie." But when she lifted her head, smiling as she reported, "I've secured the caterer. Everything will be perfect, Mr. Caldwell." He could only nod, his voice quieter than usual. "I knew I could trust you." As Natalie lowered her gaze back to her work, Ethan turned away. To her, she was building a beautiful dream. To him, guilt loomed heavier by the hour, a shadow he could not chase away. Saturday arrived faster than Natalie expected. She stood before the mirror, adjusting her hair and a dress that was simple, yet elegant. In her hands rested a carefully wrapped box, a vintage film camera she had spent nearly a week tracking down. She pictured the face of Ethan's niece opening it and smiled faintly. Strange. He has never shared so much about family. Maybe behind that cold shell, he is still a man who cares. At 8 o'clock in the evening, Natalie stepped out of her car in front of the tower where Ethan lived. The elevator carried her to the top floor. When the doors opened, she drew a deep breath and walked toward the penthouse door. It opened, and in that instant, her smile vanished. There were no guests, no decorations, no glowing lights, no cheerful laughter. Only a table set for two, candles flickering, wine already poured, and Ethan standing there waiting for her. Natalie froze. The gift box in her hands grew unbearably heavy. What is this?" her voice rasped. "Where's the party? Where's your niece?" Ethan's eyes met hers, then faltered. He drew a breath, voice low. "There is no party. There is no niece." The box slipped from her grasp, landing with a dull thud on the floor. Natalie stepped back, eyes wide with disbelief. "What did you just say?" I made it up, all of it. I just wanted a night with you. Not in the office, not behind the mask of work, just you and me." Natalie's chest tightened painfully. Her breaths came sharp as the past week replayed in her mind. Every call, every meeting, every late night spent ensuring perfection. All of it for a lie. "You lied to me." Her voice trembled, carrying not only anger but deep disappointment. "You made me believe you were someone different, that you could care." Ethan stepped forward, his gaze desperate. "Natalie, please, let me explain. I never meant to hurt you." Never meant to? She cut in, eyes blazing. I spent an entire week believing this mattered to you, believing I was helping you do something meaningful for your family. And it was all a game? His fists clenched. His voice cracked. I didn't know any other way. I wasn't brave enough to just say it. I love you. The room fell into a silence so sharp, the candle flames seemed louder. Natalie froze. She had long suspected those glances. Those silences meant more than business. But to hear him say the words, she didn't know whether to feel elated or broken. You think love is an excuse for deception? She whispered, her voice thick. If you truly loved me, you wouldn't have chosen this. In Ethan's eyes was raw desperation. He reached out, but Natalie stepped back. I can't trust you anymore, Ethan. Not after this. With that, she turned, striding toward the door. Her back was straight, her steps firm, but inside her heart was shattering. Alone, Ethan stood in the candlelit silence, the flicker reflecting across his face. And for the first time in years, the man who had never feared defeat felt utterly conquered. New York still glittered as it always did, but to Natalie, the lights had never felt colder. After walking out of Ethan's penthouse, she swore to herself she would rebuild the distance. No more glances exchanged, no more fleeting smiles, only work, pure and cold. For the next week, she kept her vow. Each morning, she set his coffee on his desk without a word. In meetings, she reported facts without letting her eyes drift. No more late nights together. No more heavy silences bridging the desk. Only silence remained. Ethan endured it all. But inside him, silence did not mean surrender. On Friday evening, as Natalie packed her bag to leave the office, her phone lit up. A message. Come to the rooftop. If after tonight you still want to walk away, I won't stop you. Natalie froze. She could ignore it, walk out, and end everything. Yet her feet carried her to the elevator, her hand pressing the button for the rooftop. The doors opened. Night wind rushed in, laced with salt from the distant harbor. Before her, the city stretched wide, a sea of endless light. Ethan stood there, a small table set simply, no candles, no lies. He turned at the sound of her steps. His eyes no longer held the cold pride of the CEO, but something rare, vulnerability. Thank you for coming, he said, voice rough. Natalie crossed her arms, her gaze sharp. You think another dinner can erase what you did? Ethan shook his head. No, I'm not here to hide behind pretense. I just want to say what I should have said long ago. He drew a deep breath, his eyes never leaving hers. I've controlled everything in my life. Deals, rivals, outcomes. But with you, I couldn't. I was a coward, choosing the wrong way to keep you near. Natalie, I love you, not with calculation, not with power, but with a love that terrifies me, because it's beyond my control. The wind swept her hair. Natalie stood still, her heart pounding wildly. Part of her longed to believe, another screamed, Don't let him break you again. You think those 3 words are enough for me to forgive? She whispered. No, Ethan admitted. I don't expect forgiveness now. I just want you to know the truth, without lies. Silence stretched. Below them, New York blazed brighter than ever, but between them, the air thickened with waiting. At last, Natalie spoke, her voice trembling. Do you know what you made me? A woman working day and night, believing she was creating something special, when in truth, she was just the victim of a lie. Ethan stepped closer, his voice shaking but resolute. If you want to walk away, I won't stop you. But if there's even a fragment left inside you, just a fragment, give me the chance to prove that this time is different. Natalie met his eyes, no longer the steel wall of pride, but a man stripped bare, terrified of losing what mattered most. Her chest tightened. She could turn away, step into the elevator, and close the chapter. But her lips whispered instead. One dinner. No promises, no commitments. Just one dinner. Ethan smiled faintly, soft as the breeze. Then I'll start from there. Beneath the vast sky, against the endless lights of the city, two broken souls began to rewrite a beginning, fragile, but true. The days after the rooftop night left everything between Natalie and Ethan suspended in uncertainty. They no longer avoided each other, yet neither returned to what once was. Between them lay an unfinished bridge, fragile enough to collapse with a single misstep. Natalie kept their bond strictly professional. She brought his coffee, reported his schedule, attended meetings, so polished that no one in the company sensed anything unusual. But only she knew how her heart stumbled each time his eyes met hers. On Friday afternoon, Ethan tapped gently on her office door. I need to talk. Natalie looked up, brows drawn slightly, then nodded. Ethan entered, standing tall before her desk, his eyes brighter than usual, yet carrying something unspoken. I'm flying to London next week. A critical deal. I'll be gone 2 weeks. She nodded softly. Good luck. Ethan didn't leave. Instead, he drew an envelope from his pocket and placed it before her. Natalie opened it. A plane ticket lay inside. I want you to come with me. His voice low but resolute. Natalie froze. What did you just say? I know I destroyed your trust, but if there's any chance, we need to start again somewhere untouched by the past. London. Just one trip. No strings. Her gaze lingered on the ticket, her heart surging. Go with him? After everything? Reason screamed no. Yet another voice whispered, if you don't try, you'll regret it forever. If I go, she said slowly, it doesn't mean I forgive you. Ethan nodded. I don't expect forgiveness yet. I only want the chance to prove myself. They held each other's eyes for a long moment. Finally, Natalie closed the envelope, her voice quiet but firm. One trip, just one. On Monday morning, JFK Airport swelled with crowds. Natalie stood among them, suitcase in hand, gripping her ticket tightly. Her heart raced. What am I truly doing? From afar, Ethan approached, tall in a gray coat, his gaze finding her with quiet relief. You actually came. Natalie nodded, whispering. One trip. Remember that. He smiled faintly, saying nothing more. London welcomed them with a damp chill, mist curling over the historic streets. A car carried them to their hotel, the lights of the Thames glimmering beyond tall windows. Welcome to London, Ethan said, his tone softer. Natalie answered with a small smile, though her guard held. This is business, don't forget. Ethan nodded. Business only. Yet in his eyes lingered something else, a silent vow that this time he would not let her down. That night, in her hotel room, Natalie stood by the window, gazing at the city of stone facades and golden lamps. A knock sounded. Ethan appeared, holding 2 cups of coffee. First night in London, want to take a walk? Natalie hesitated. Part of her wanted to refuse, yet her feet betrayed her, agreeing. And as they stepped into the bustling streets, Natalie felt, for the first time in weeks, a small weight lift from her heart. That night, London glowed with its timeless gold. Cobblestone streets glistened after a soft rain, lights shimmering on the Thames. Natalie and Ethan walked side by side, warm coffee cups in hand. They spoke little, letting the silence between them say what words could not. As they neared the London Eye, Ethan stopped. The great wheel shone in the night, turning slowly like a massive heartbeat. "Want to try?" he asked softly. Natalie hesitated, then nodded. The cabin closed, lifting them upward. The city spread beneath them, historic rooftops mingling with modern lights. Natalie pressed her hand against the cool glass, exhaling quietly. "I never thought I'd be here, with him, in this moment." Ethan sat across, eyes fixed on her. At last he spoke, voice low but bare. "Natalie, I know I was wrong. I know I hurt you. But there's one thing I can't keep silent any longer." She turned, gaze steady. "What is it you want to say?" He drew a deep breath. "I love you. Not because you work for me. Not because you understand me better than anyone. I love the way you never bow, the way you command a room with one sentence. I love your stubbornness, your pride that keeps me in check. I love you even when I tried hardest not to." The words fell heavy as stone. Natalie's chest tightened. Two voices clashed in her mind. "Believe him. Don't believe again." "Do you think words are enough?" she asked, her voice trembling. Ethan shook his head. "No, I don't expect forgiveness now. I just want you to know. This time, no lies, no schemes, only the truth." Silence filled the cabin. The wheel lifted them higher, into a sky ablaze with 1,000 lights. Natalie turned away, gazing down at the winding river. "He says he loves me, and I feel his sincerity. But am I brave enough to trust again?" Ethan reached out, not touching, only holding his hand in the space between them, an unspoken invitation. "If there's even a fragment of trust left, just a fragment, place your hand in mine." Her heart hammered. She wanted to turn away, to say no, but her fingers trembled forward, resting lightly in his palm. A breath rushed from Ethan, as though he had waited his whole life for this moment. He held her hand, not tight, but steady, gentle and sure. Natalie closed her eyes, whispering, "You've been wrong about so much, Ethan. But this time, I want to believe you mean it." And in the glowing cabin above London's skyline, a confession finally found its answer. Not forgiveness yet, but a door cracked open toward a new beginning. 3 months after their London trip, everything had changed. Caldwell Enterprises still pulsed with its relentless rhythm, numbers flashing across screens, but within that current, one truth could no longer be hidden. Ethan Caldwell and Natalie Carter were now together. They had never announced it. No company-wide email, no formal declaration. Yet in the office, everyone knew. A single glance was enough. The way Ethan's gaze lingered on Natalie longer than necessary. The way she smiled faintly when setting his coffee down. Small details, subtle, yet undeniable. Still, they kept absolute professionalism. In board meetings, Natalie took notes and coordinated as always, no gesture out of place. Ethan remained cold, decisive, dissecting figures and strategies, but in quiet moments, when their eyes accidentally met, a warmth ignited, bright enough to soften the entire room. One evening, after a long day's work, Ethan personally drove Natalie home instead of leaving it to the company driver. They sat side by side in the sleek car, city lights streaking past the windows. "The whole office knows," Natalie murmured, lips curved faintly. Ethan smiled, rare and unguarded. "And how do you feel about that?" I feel strange. I used to fear this. I feared being seen as the boss's lover, feared that all my hard work would be erased. But now it feels different. Ethan turned to her, his voice steady, sincere. Because it's not a game anymore, Natalie. This is the truth. And I want the whole world to know I love you. Her heart quivered at his words. 3 months ago, he was a man willing to invent a lie to keep her near. Now, he was a man unafraid to speak truth, even if it left him exposed. She whispered softly, "You've changed, Ethan. You're no longer just the cold CEO I once knew." He smiled. "Perhaps I'm still that CEO, but there's one thing you've done that no one else ever could. You broke down the walls around my heart." Natalie leaned her head lightly against his shoulder. The city lights outside blurred, leaving only the steady rhythm of the man beside her. Within her, there was no longer fear of judgment, no longer the dread that love would ruin everything she had built. Now she understood. Sometimes love was what made people stronger. Life at the office continued to spin with numbers, meetings, and constant pressure. But beneath that relentless surface, Natalie knew her heart had changed. More importantly, she knew Ethan's heart was no longer the same either. One weekend afternoon, Ethan appeared unexpectedly at her apartment door. No driver, no bodyguards, just him and a faint smile. "Come with me." Natalie frowned. "Where?" "You'll see." The car left the city, gliding through sunlit roads of the countryside. The late-day light spread golden, as if time itself slowed for them. When the car stopped, a vast field of flowers stretched out before her. Their fragrance drifted in the breeze, petals swaying beneath the setting sun. She turned to him, breath catching. "Ethan, this place." He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took her hand, guiding her through the sea of blossoms. Natalie's heart raced, each step carrying her toward something unnamed. At the field's center, Ethan stopped. He let go of her hand, drew a deep breath, then slowly knelt on the soft grass. Natalie froze. The world seemed to hold its breath. From his pocket, Ethan drew a small velvet box and opened it. Inside, a ring shimmered with the last rays of daylight. Brilliant, yet simple. His voice dropped low, trembling but steady. "Natalie, I once thought I could control everything, but I can't control this love. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, righting my wrongs, proving that you are what matters most. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in Natalie's eyes. Memories rushed back. Mornings in the office, tense boardrooms, the lie that once broke her, and the moments since that proved his love was real. Her voice shook as she whispered, "Ethan, only one thing?" He looked up, eyes clouded with fear. "What is it? Don't let me down." Through a smile blurred by tears, Natalie extended her hand. Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger, his hand trembling yet firm. The sunset bathed the field in gold, enfolding them in a silent blessing. No audience, no fireworks, no cheers. Only two hearts, found at last, holding hands as they walked into the light. It wasn't spectacle. It was a perfect moment, eternal.